we invite our competitors there and they invite us to their conferences. I have my competitors on my podcast all the time, and it's fine. The way that our community is, it really feels like a rising tide lifts all boats. It's not just all us versus them.
Hello, welcome to devtools-fm. This is a podcast about developer tools and the people who make them. I'm Andrew, and this is my co-host, Justin.
Hey, everyone. We're really excited to have Jamon Holmgren on. Didn't quite pronounce that right. But
it's good.
Jamon, you're the co-founder and CTO of Infinite Red, and we're really excited to talk to you about that. But before we dive in, would you like to tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks, Justin and Andrew, for having me on. Really appreciate it. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, still live here, Southwest Washington State with my wife and 3 of my 4 kids. The other one has moved out. He's just turned 21. He's married himself and has his own kids. So I am a grandpa as well.
Wow.
Congratulations. She's 1 year old. Yeah. Thank you. It came very quickly, more quickly than I expected, but, and I've coded since I was, 12 years old and always loved coding. And I've run a consultancy now, 2 different ones, kind of back to back for 10 years each. So 20 years. And, I guess personal hobbies, I play hockey. I'm a goalie, and I play kind of a rec league here, which is fun. We just won the championship few weeks ago. One of our many championships. We've been pretty successful, and so that's a lot of fun. And my son also plays on that team. And I don't know. I'm making a game on the side as well, and still enjoying doing React Native, which is kind of our main thing that we do at Infinite Red Consulting.
Cool. So let's start with the games, because it kind of is like your current point in your life bookends on your programming experience. So can you 12 is so early to start with programming. Like I'm a little bit jealous. I tried to do coding in high school and it never got anywhere. So can you tell us how you started coding and then that eventually leading to a software consultancy?
Yeah. My dad he was a business owner, so he owned an excavation company, and he figured that he's much more of the type of person who would rather run an excavator than run QuickBooks, right? And so he thought, well, rather than this mess of paper that I have in 1992 or whenever it was, why don't I go get one of these new personal computers out there, and supposedly this will do everything for me. Turns out you still have to do a lot of work to make it work, but he got this 286. It did not have any sort of programming on it, other than it did have some batch files. So when you started, I don't know, you guys are probably a little younger than me, but there's autoexec.bat was kind of it would start when you started, your computer would run automatically. It was just a script, and it would show a menu, and the menu had just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I remember one of them was QuickBooks, or maybe it was even Quicken at the time, and with a really old version of that, a word processor. And number 5 was games. And when you hit 5 and hit enter, I figured out, as I'm poking around and trying to figure this thing out, it was just a 5.bat, which would then run, and it would do CD / games. And it would go into that, and then it would just do a dir to list it, in Linux it'd be an ls, and then you could see all your games and you could run them. So I was really intrigued by that little system there, that and I don't know if I've even hardly talked about this part of the journey, but I was so intrigued by the fact that you could just have a file, and I could go in and edit it. I edited the menu. So really this is more 11, I think, when I was doing this. I figured out that you could edit the batch files, and I could change the menu. And so I added things to the menu that would pop up, various things. And I remember I added to that first menu, I added, Lucas, do not this is my brother, my younger brother. Do not save over my stuff or whatever. Like I just wrote that in there. So he would, every time the computer would start up, he knew, don't go and like save over my stuff. That memory has been in there for a while. I haven't pulled out that. So I was really intrigued by that, but of course batch files are pretty limited what you can do. And I tried like poking around inside of, cause I figured out how to like edit somehow. I don't know what we had. We didn't have like QBasic, but I could edit somehow. And I went into an exe file and I changed something. And it was a game that was like a Risk game. And it just never ran again. Like we could never play that game again. It was just broken forever. And of course that was like, okay, you need to have a backup. How about some version control here? Don't just go change things. And of course it was just garbage on the screen that I was looking. I was like, what if I just change one thing? What will happen, you know? And so then my dad bought a 486 so he could run. That's right. He had QuickBooks or Quicken on the old one. He wanted to run QuickBooks and it wouldn't run on a 286. So he bought a 486 and this one came with QBasic. And then I was like, okay, now I can like make my own programs.
It's really fun hearing that story because, you know, there's all these like talks about like local first software and malleable software and like all these things. Like people was like, oh, I just like want to edit my programs. And it's funny that that's where we started. You know, it used to be so simple that you could just like pop open a file and like change how the computer worked. And we're many years and many layers of complexity later. It's like now hard again to like do these things. But it is fun to sort of connect it back to like, we kind of want some of that nostalgia back.
Totally. Yeah. At least that's how I've always been. I do remember in elementary school, they had some Apple IIe's. They had one Macintosh, you know, like a black and white screen one. And then they had a Commodore 64 and they had a few other computers that I wish I knew today what they were, because I'm sure that they were classics, you know, Amigas or whatever. And, but I do remember the Commodore 64 as well. And you could go in there and you had to type in your program. Like you couldn't just, you know, run it from, there's no hard drive. Like you had to type it in or load it from a disk or a tape, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, if you were typing something in from a book or something, then you could change it. You could make changes. And I think that that's a pretty common thing with people who learn to code young. They would usually have some random thing that they just want to make one little change to. I know that like for some people it was like MySpace with the CSS, or what was the other one other than MySpace? There was Neopets, you know, stuff like that. So these types of where you would learn HTML, CSS just from wanting to tweak your profile or something. And then for other people, it's like Minecraft mods or something along those lines. And so for me, I didn't have the money to buy games, and I honestly, there wasn't I lived rurally, so like getting to a game store, getting to a computer store to buy a game was just sort of like not really a thing for me. And so I thought, well, I can make my own games, and plus I want to like see what I can make. And so I programmed probably, I estimate around 200 little games or apps or whatever over the course of my teenage years. I was constantly spinning something else up. And and one of my problems back then was just, I would be excited in the beginning, but then it turns out that building a game is hard work. And you get to a certain point and you're like, well, okay, you know, this new game idea I have is going to be better. And so then you jump over to that. There are some benefits to kind of approaching it that way, where I did get to kind of start fresh all the time and kind of refine how I like to, rather than being stuck with some architecture that I'd have to like refactor everything to make. I could just start fresh and try a new pattern and try a new architecture, which was really actually, I usually look at it as a negative that I could never finish a game, but in a lot of ways it was good. It was helpful for me to understand how to think about architecture and what were the impacts. When did I like bog down? And then start over, and can I get through that part? You know, once I graduated from high school, I had worked for my dad in the summers, running equipment, you know, excavators, bulldozers, things like that as a 17, 18-year-old kid. And that was fun. I enjoyed that. It was nice. But then my dad sold his business, became a full-time pastor, and we moved to Southwest Washington, not very far away from where we grew up in Oregon. And then I did other construction. So I did, framing and worked for a home builder, did home design, those types of things. And but all along I was building games. I mostly did like game maker when I got to a certain point. I graduated from QBasic to game maker, and I always did 2D games. So but it is pretty interesting to think about it as like bookends, because I'm kind of back to my happy place now of making games. And in this case, one game that I've been working on 2 years, which would never have been a thing back then, but I've been able to sustain it, hopefully, all the way through.
With age brings patience.
Yeah, age and treating my ADHD.
Yeah, well, heard that. So you're kind of talking about this like pretty rich history. You started your first consultancy like pretty young too. You were 23 when you...
So I got married at 21. I was almost 22. And then my wife had our son, who is now 21, when I was 23, and I was working for that home builder, doing home design and stuff. And I just, I enjoyed that company. In fact, our office is still in their building. I still am connected. My brother works there, and I swing by their office all the time. So really great company, but I wanted to own my own business, and it was more about owning my own business than it was like starting a consultancy or anything like that. I had been building little websites for a few years for various people, my church first, and then like kind of moving on to others. Would just ask like, hey, can you build a website? Because I don't know if you remember, but back in those days, small businesses were sort of like, well, the yellow pages doesn't work anymore. Like we got to do something different. And so they needed websites, and they needed their maybe first really ugly website to be their second really ugly website that I made. And so I started doing a little bit of that. And then also my uncle had his own home design company, and was like, I've got more work than I can handle. So I can kind of like give you overflow work and stuff that I already knew how to do. So I did 3D home design and websites when I first started, because it was like, I can pay the bills while I'm kind of starting my web journey here. But then 2007 and 8 came, and the housing crisis, just zero home design work. Like it was just gone overnight. It felt like we finished up our last projects, and my uncle like didn't really even have enough for himself, not even counting myself. So then it was just like, okay, well, websites, that's all I've got. I didn't really kind of consider going and getting a job, because I owned my business, and I wanted to give that a go. And I'm kind of stubborn that way. And it was, but it did start picking up. Like the next couple years were tough, for sure. Very tough. Really kind of like, we had 2 kids by then, and my wife was amazing at, being economical with things. And I pushed really hard with my business, and eventually got to the point where in 2009, I needed employees. And so I moved out of our spare bedroom, which was where I was, and got that little office at the home builder, and started hiring. So that was, I was doing PHP at the time, did PHP actually for quite a while, eventually switched to Rails, and I was, went from more websites. I still did websites for a long time, but it was a lot of web apps too, like building back-end dashboards for different companies, manufacturers, a lot of that stuff. And then it got, it felt like I just got bigger and bigger projects. Built the company up to about 14 or 15 people, something like that, and including a design team. And then 2015, I was just stressed because it was like, just, I'd been pushing for 10 years, it just been like, just felt like I was pedaling really hard. Some years were better than others, but I really needed a change. And that's when I ended up, I had gotten into iOS development, and I ended up I went to my first conference down in San Francisco, and I met my future business partners, Todd Worth and Gant Laborde, as well as Ken Miller, who was an original founder. And we hit it off, and then Todd and I became friends, and we started talking about the challenges that each of us had, and then ended up, long story short, this is a long story, but we ended up deciding that, hey, we should look seriously at merging our two companies. He had about, I think, around 10 people, but much more senior level. And then I had more junior level people that I had taught to code, many of whom are still with me and have their own, 10, 15 years of experience now. But they were juniors back then. And so then we did the merge, and it's been 10 more years since then.
Yeah, I can really see how like your early childhood experience has kind of led into that. Like you like to off projects, like that's consulting. You're doing a lot of one-off projects where you learn and go on to the next one. And with your dad owning his own business, it's like for you to want to go, oh, I want to do that too. And those things combining. Yeah. Infinite Red is what we should talk about next. Is what I know you for. You've done a lot of really cool work. I've seen some of the apps; they look really nice. But one interesting thing is you guys were all remote before remote work was a thing. Essentially, we're kind of ebbing away from those. But how do you look at like building and fostering remote teams like that, and how has the experience gone for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. My first company, we were not remote, and I had that office, and we moved around and kind of got bigger, but within the same building, got bigger ones. And at the largest, I had, decent size for a 14-person company. In fact, we were a little too big for the space, and it was a nice enough office for what we were doing. And I did really enjoy that. Like those were some good times, even though they were stressful and I worked long hours. When I met Todd and Gant, well, Todd at the time lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, now lives he went back to his home state of Nevada. And Gant is from New Orleans. And so they were already remote because they had to be. Like everybody was in random. Mark Rickert, who's one of our principal software engineers, he was at the time over in North Carolina. Now he's in Utah. It's like just everybody was everywhere. And there's no way we could do a merger if we had to decide on a city to live in. It just didn't make sense. And I had already been open to the idea of remote. I thought it was a cool idea. And what I appreciated about Todd in particular was the intentional way he approached it. Todd's had multiple businesses, multiple consultancies. He's 10 years older. He has a lot of experience. He really became a mentor to me in a lot of ways that I'd never had. He was, and so he really brought an intentionality to being remote that I thought was great. And Todd's the type of person that when he comes into a real office, like an actual office, he's the person who will go around and say hi to everybody and good morning. Most people kind of just walk past each other and go to their desk, but he's the person that if you do that to him, he thinks you're being rude, like, hey, say hi, and so he does that online. He's just constantly checking in with people. He loves to do this thing we call kitchen table. Long story why we call it, but it's basically a permanent Zoom room that you can jump into, and people are just hanging out in there and working together, usually in silence together, but maybe a little bit of chit chat. And it's just about let's recreate as much of it as we can, but without having to uproot everybody from where they choose to live and go somewhere else. We do only hire in the US, which there's different schools of thought around asynchronous versus synchronous remote work. What's worked for us is the synchronous remote work part. And you do have to be intentional. You have to work at it, and you have to accept the fact that it's not going to be as good in some areas, but it's going to be better in others. And chief among them is that people can work, live maybe by their family or wherever, maybe the climate they need or whatever. And you don't lose someone if they move from Denver to Connecticut, which one of our developers just did, like the only thing we noticed is that his internet got worse. That's about it. And that's kind of the brilliant part about it. But there's stuff I still miss about being in the office for sure. I mean, just for sure.
I'm forced to go into work now in a hybrid structure, and it's like the worst of both worlds. But like those times when you are in the office next to the people you work with, there are those like little aha moments, and like the communication is easier in some regards, but it's definitely a big old trade-off.
It's a trade-off. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And we've kind of lamented to each other that, man, it would be so cool if we could be in the same office sometimes, but we've made the most of it. And we do things like, I've got this sort of podcaster setup here, but most of our people do, even if they don't podcast, because we're on video calls all the time and we want to sound good and we want the background to look decent. We want to do things like that, no offense. And, when we come in, like at the very first part of COVID, like everybody's like trying to come on Zoom and stuff, and they're like, they can't figure anything out. Like Zoom is just, and then as time went on, then that actually got a lot better because people started realizing this actually matters. I remember back in the day, and this doesn't happen nearly as often, but back in the day, we would meet with people all the time who would be sitting around a conference table with one camera and you couldn't hear anybody. And they came up with all kinds of things to try to make that better, right? Like all these technologies. And it's like, no, just sit in one screen, one camera per person with headphones and a good mic. Like that's all you need and you're good. So yeah, we had to figure a lot of those things out.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges to building a remote culture, but I do think that like investing in the quality is good. I like the kitchen table idea. The thing that I saw a little bit of during the pandemic is like people just like trying to establish presence in some way.
Yep.
Yeah, it can be hard, but I think the hardest thing actually is running a hybrid where you have some people in the office and some people remote, and like trying not to exclude the people who are remote from conversations that happen in the office. That's tricky.
Yeah, I honestly, Andrew, when you mentioned that was one of my thoughts is like, do you feel like sometimes people assume you'll know things because it was, mentioned around the office or something like that, or maybe your setup is different where it's been refined better than that?
It's such a big company that I don't think we get all the benefits of like working as a team. Like some days I can go into the office and talk to nobody, which is like, it feels like it totally defeats the purpose. It's like, I got to drive 2 hours in the day and I got nothing out of this. But other days there's benefits.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. And we've even done some things, not to go, too long on this, but I could do a whole podcast just on this stuff, but we've even done things like Slack, for example, can be this massive fire hose of information. And so we have, unfortunately, I've had to sort of like be a little draconian in how I approach it. But like we have a Slack culture and it's very, very specific in how we interact, because I don't want, nobody wants just a whole bunch of irrelevant information filling up their notifications. And so, as an example, we are very conscientious about threading conversations. So you put like a title of what you want to talk about in your main channel, and then all the details and conversation happen in a thread, which means that when someone goes and looks at it, they can opt in. Like they can go in there and click on like get notified or just comment underneath it. And then they're like following it. Right. Versus, so if there's 50 messages back and forth about something, I see one, the very first one, and then I can opt in and go like read the 50 messages if I want. It's more like clicking into a forum post rather than a real time like stream of everything mixed. Like someone replies and you think it's about a different topic or something like that. We'll even go back and update topics that someone posted a while ago rather than making a new one. And there's other parts of this as well around how we kind of break up our channels, where some channels are and some aren't, which ones are required to be in, which ones you can just opt out of or mute. Those are all really things that we've put a lot of thought into. if you don't have that, then Slack just feels overwhelming, and it's just you just can't keep up at all.
I went to the Recurse Center, which is a programming community here in Brooklyn, and they use this app called Zulip, which is like an open source chat app, and it does everything's threaded by default, like everything's a thread. And I always thought that was a thing that like Slack could have done better. It's just like give us an option to make that the default. I still don't think you can do that, right? Like I know in Discord you can have a thread bot, which will do that for you. But
yeah, I think even Discord has some forum-like thing that you can do as well. I don't remember. I think you have to be a community to do that.
Oh yeah,
I've wanted this for years. I really, really wanted that, because then if you just make it that like the first person who posts has to click create new post rather than like reply. If you have reply and create new post, that would just fix everything, because then create new post is always a new thing. And you could choose maybe in a channel to just be like, this is just a free form chat. And the other one is, no, this is more like high signal, low noise. Like, let's make this, very, very specific. We do things, oh man, yeah, I could go on forever, but we do things like in some channels, they're almost like just agendas for the next meeting, where you just put something in there and it'll have a prefix. So for an owners meeting, for example, we put OM : whatever we're doing and whatever we want to talk about. And you can still thread under that in chat if you want, but we just know that next time we're going to talk about it, and then we put a little check mark like underneath it when we're done. And it's great for just having like a free flowing agenda that we can also look back through and see. So there's ways to use Slack really effectively. And I've been in Slack cultures where they haven't really had any framework over the top of Slack, and it's pretty awful. And I see why people don't like Slack.
Yeah. Another part of remote culture. Let's transition over and talk about, React Native, I guess, is an important topic. So Infinite Red, like you and the company as a whole, were like pretty early adopters of React Native. So it's changed a lot over the years.
Oh, yeah.
It's evolved quite a bit. I'm curious, like, what is your experience working with it today? How has that transition been? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, React Native really came. So I was doing native iOS development, and people kept asking about Android, and it's like, okay, well, I don't really know how to do Android, but I'll, let's figure it out. And so eventually we started building some Android apps, but it just felt like such a waste of time to build the same app twice. And I had built like a phone gap, which is like, obviously precursor to Cordova and whatnot. I just never could achieve the results that I wanted. It felt more like a web app than a mobile app. And when the merger happened, we were looking around trying to find something better. React Native came out. It was announced in like March or February of 2015, and then we merged in October. So it was a good timing. And then September, the Android version came out. So you had both iOS and Android. Todd went and did a spike into it, and really kind of, because he was really dubious. He's like, JavaScript, I don't know, like this is interpreted. I don't feel like this is going to be the experience we want. He came back and said, guys, I think it's pretty good. I think it'll be good. And so we had two projects we were going to start that were native, and we went back to them and said, can we change technology on you? Instead of doing it in native, can we use this new tech? And both of them said yes. So Gant and another developer that we had at the time led those two teams in parallel, building the new apps in React Native. And this was like 0.11, I think, was our very first commit. And they shared a lot of information. They were going back and forth on stuff, and it ended up resulting in our starter kit, which we still have out there after nearly 10 years, which is Ignite. And you can build a new React Native app with our preferences. Over the years, so in those early days, like major stuff was missing. There were definitely a lot of bumps along the road. We had to a lot of times write native code to fix things. We had to commit directly or contribute directly to React Native itself. And we kind of went from that to later. And of course the stuff on top of it changed because, you start out with, I don't know, like, I don't think it was Redux. I think we did use Redux on those first two. Like, it was pretty new though. And we used that. We also, navigation wasn't figured out. It was like a whole lot of stuff. And then over time, then more and more libraries sort of became more standardized because we got like React navigation, which is what most people use. There's also Expo Router now, which is built on top of that. But there's also things like the transition from modern JavaScript, which was new, like ES 2015 or ES 6, all the way to TypeScript and the adoption there, which I was dubious about at first. And it took me a while to kind of come around to it because I was a Ruby dev. I was a PHP dev. I was JavaScript. I'm like, I've been shipping software for many years and I haven't needed types. I don't know what the deal is here. Of course, now I like types, but back then it just felt like it was a waste of time to me. And I came around, but it was interesting because my role within Infinite Red during that time, I went from being like the lead dev, as well as doing sales and operations and finance and everything for my company, to just operations at first. Like, that was kind of my role, running projects basically, and doing sales with Todd. So Todd and I would do sales together, and then we would split up the projects once we got the projects, and we would run them each. And then, but eventually, Ken left, one of the original founders, and he had been the CTO, so I moved over to CTO, which was a way better fit for me. And I, I wanted to be near the tech again because I just felt like I was falling behind. And so got to lead the tech team. I eventually was doing sales myself, and then Todd was leading operations. So there's a lot of evolution in even just my job and my role there at Infinite Red. And now I don't do sales. Gant's doing sales. And we have a director level that has really stepped up and done a lot of stuff too. So my role has kind of narrowed even more. So yeah, it's been an interesting evolution of React Native itself during that time. Expo, it was like pretty early, but it felt like a demo toy. Like you just throw a demo up on Expo, but when you really want to build it, then you build it in React Native. And I would say up to probably 2022, 2023, something like that. When that changed, now everybody's using Expo going forward. It's kind of, it's very rare not to start an Expo project. Although we tend to get the ones that aren't, because those are the hard ones. But yeah, so that evolution has been big. And then, React itself, we went through the hooks transition. We went through, all this stuff that's been kind of going on. Now we have the new React compiler. We have the new architecture in React Native, which has unlocked a bunch of stuff. And to honestly, my surprise, React Native continues to grow accelerate. I've never been on a technology that's had an arc like this. It's been pretty amazing.
Yeah, for all the conversation about like constantly changing frameworks in the JavaScript community, React's been around a long time. Like, I hopped on it really early too, and like it's been like the last 10 years at this point. That's pretty solid technology to me.
Yeah, it's as much as we complain about it and everybody complains about it, the reality is it's incredible. And like, I guess it's like that saying that there's technologies that everybody complains about, and then there's technologies that nobody uses. And that's pretty much, at least React is the first. We definitely keep an eye on it because it was 2020-ish. We finally kind of got rid of our last, other stuff that we were doing, and we just 100% said we're all in on React Native, which we're already doing 80-some%, 90-some%, which felt a little bit scary, but it was the right call. Like, just really, really focus on React Native. It's already what we're known for. Like, why are we not committing to this? Let's just go. And but we keep a close eye on it. Like, Flutter comes out or any of these other frameworks, Kotlin multi-platform, any of these other options that are out there, and they're interesting. But so far it's been hard to find anything that has the developer experience, the productivity, the ability to ship a really good app. I mean, we know because we've done it. It's not necessarily always easy, but you for sure can. You can always ship a good app with React Native, no matter what it is. You just have to spend the time and have the expertise. And then now with AI, I think that actually really locks it in, because all of the history and all of the React code that's out there open source means that it's pretty good at it, and it can be very productive at it. We no longer just have to think about about us human, like how we think about it. It's also, can the AI effectively do it?
Well, speaking of humans, you've also done a lot of work at fostering community in the React Native ecosystem. You have the React Native radio podcast, your Ignite project, and a few other React projects, as you said. You have the React Native newsletter and have a React Native conference. So you guys have focused a lot on community building. Have you viewed that as an important part of all of this?
Yeah. So like I said, that, my business partners and I met at a conference, and we were doing open source, and we ended up collaborating on an open source native iOS project called Red Potion. And that was literally us owners as programmers collaborating, open source. And I had never experienced anything like that. That was kind of an unbelievable time where I'm able to, because I was used to being surrounded by juniors, trying to get a project done. And that's a very different thing than collaborating with some really high level programmers who are amazing, like Gant and Todd and Ken and Mark and all these guys that we were working with at the beginning. And that feeling was it was amazing. And I remember, so I gave a talk at that conference, first tech conference I'd ever gone to. I was the first talk. And but I remember meeting someone, and he came up to me. He's like, I didn't know that you created ProMotion, which was my library that I had made before Apple stole my name. And he said, I didn't realize you made that. That was the thing that actually got me to this conference, because I really loved that, and I would have given up on iOS development if it wasn't for your library. And that was just the coolest thing ever to hear that. So that sort of feeling was just deep within us. It was in our DNA. And so when we started doing React Native, it was never a question of, were we going to do open source? It was just how much can we put out there? Let's roll. There's a lot that we can do here, so let's make some good stuff. And we've continued to do that, because we still maintain Ignite and Reactitron and a lot of the other stuff. So yeah, that was definitely a big part of it. The conference, I had just wondered hey, where's the React Native conferences? I want to send my people to them. There wasn't one at the time. And so we're maybe we should make one. And so Chain React was born, and we've done it, I think now 5 times. And we have another one coming up this year in July in Portland, Oregon. So definitely check that out if you want to rub elbows with 400 or 500 React Native Expo developers. Expo is co-hosting it this year with us, which is awesome. So they're going to be there in force. They're going to have a whole bunch of people there, as well as Infinite Red people. It's always just a great time. I love the conference. It loses money every year, but I don't care. It's awesome. Yeah. And then, newsletter has been great, just for keeping the community connected. One thing I love about these things is that we invite our competitors there, and they invite us to their conferences. I have my competitors on my podcast all the time, and it's fine. That's not the way that our community is. It really feels like a rising tide lifts all boats. It's not just all us versus them. And that's how we like to operate. And it's worked out well so far for a decade.
Yeah, that's very admirable. And, I think it's probably a great way to get work too. It's you get well known. It's great marketing, goodwill for the community. You're obviously tastemakers in the space. So yeah, it seems like it's very additive.
Yeah. And we try to I appreciate that. And what we try to do is essentially have, we know we're not going to be out there just trying to max every possible thing. we're 30, 32 people, something like that right now. We're not huge. We're not looking to grow huge. We might add a few people over the next year or two, but we're by a few, I mean just a handful, and we rarely lose people. So we want to just kind of keep that feel. We don't have to catch every project. We want to have the right projects. We want to work on projects that we can be proud of, that we can feel like we're very, very good at. And so, but in order to find the right projects, we do have to be known in a lot of places and get in front of the right people. And one of the most effective ways has been to be everywhere. Just have the newsletter, not, the conference and podcast and all these things. It is a lot of work. We have some really amazing people that continue to work on all of these things, and then just try to be out there and help people out. And once in a while, a project will come along that fits, and we can work on it. Right now, we're pretty busy. We're still like taking sales calls, but people have to be willing to be a little bit flexible about when we start. Usually sooner rather than later is better, so that we can really plan something out. But that's a good position to be in.
Yeah, it's a great place to be in. As we get close to wrapping up here, I kind of want to pull this back full circle. So we started the conversation talking about, you're doing games as a kid, and that's how you got into programming. And you're doing a game now. We mentioned it earlier. Yeah. So you're building Into the Dawn, a combat helicopter game in Godot, which is cool. Or Godot, I guess is the name.
Yeah, I guess that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah. I've flip-flopped on the pronunciation. Tell us about that. Like, how has that journey been? And you mentioned AI earlier when you were talking about React and its context. I'm curious, has that impacted your game dev and how you think about that?
So when my dad had that 486, he had a game. Actually, I think it was on the 286. It was called Gunship 2000 by Microprose, and it was just an absolutely incredibly designed game. And actually, about a month ago, I got a chance to have a phone call with the original game designer, Jim Day, who is now retired, but that dude is awesome. So I talked on the phone with him for a couple hours about that game. Really, really, really cool to be able to do that. But yeah, a couple of years ago, I was looking to. I knew I needed to get deep into the code again. I had sort of gone through a period of time where, I don't know, it was really hard for me to really stick with any projects, and it was hard for me to find something that I really enjoyed. Since I was a teenager, I really wanted to build a gunship style combat helicopter game. So about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, I finally decided, I'm gonna try this. My brother Denton is a game dev, and he had been using Godot. He streams under Dead Slap, if you ever want to watch his streaming. But he makes these very creative games, really cool stuff. And so he was telling me, and he's not like a professional. He's a professional programmer, but he doesn't have the same arc that I have. He's sort of does freelance little stuff here and there. He'll do random things. And so he didn't really consider himself to be like a pro programmer, but he was telling me what it was all about. And one of my developers had also did a workshop on Unity, and I tried that out a little bit, because I'd always thought 3D game programming is super hard. And when I got into it and I started using it, I was like, wait a second here. This is all the same stuff. It just happens to be another dimension, and you use 3D models, so I don't have to do pixel art. But honestly, this is pretty cool. A lot of the stuff that I already have in my brain, how I built games back in the QBasic days, is the same stuff. It's the same stuff. And so that was cool. I actually used AI to spin up basically the first version of it in 2024. 2024. So I basically prompted my way in early, probably GPT-4, I would say. I prompted 90% of the code to actually get to the point where I could actually fly around in a 3D world. And that was tremendously motivating. And then over the next probably 6 months, I spent a lot of time like not full vibe coding, but using a lot of AI to build out systems and stuff. And then I got to basically a year ago, and I was having so much trouble. I didn't understand the code base. And I'm doing this in the evenings. I'm doing this like on the weekends. I'm just kind of like hacking on it. My timeline at the time was like 10 years, like it's okay if this takes a long time. This is just a fun project. I will sell it. I'll put it on Steam, and I just, it was like I couldn't make progress. And I like stewed. I'd sit down and I'd stew and I'd try to like fix bugs, and I finally was like, I'm friggin' rewriting this thing, and I'm doing it by hand. I'm redoing it by hand. And I spent almost 6 months rewriting everything. So basically the amount of time I spent vibe coding it up, I ended up rewriting everything. With that said, some of the things I actually ended up back where the AI was originally. Like I came back to those solutions, but I did it my way, and I did it in a way that I totally understood it. And I did it in a way that I explored the space, and I learned GD script. Godot is amazing in a lot of ways. In some ways, and actually not non-trivially similar to React Native in how it works. Because it has a core that is very, very fast, the C++ core. But then it also, like Hermes on the React Native side, will compile your GD script instead of TypeScript or JavaScript into bytecode, Hermes bytecode and Godot's bytecode. And then it interprets it, but it's pretty fast at interpreting. So, and Hermes is the same. So you can approach like native speeds, not native speeds, but you can approach while still having some of the major benefits of having a dynamic language that is bytecode. Because, I mean, as an example, when I'm working and I hit save, it reloads on the fly, and the next like time that method's hit, it just runs the new version. I know that the other game engines have versions of this, but from what I understand in the bit that I've looked into it, they're not really on that same level. You still have compile times. You still have a lot of stuff that you have to, and they're just more flaky. Like a lot of serious game devs don't even really use the hot reload stuff. Where with Godot, it's actually just kind of like an obvious part of, it works really well. I learned GD script. It doesn't have as good of a type system as TypeScript. I wish it did, but it's good enough for what I need to do. And I've learned a lot of things around multiplayer because it's a co-op multiplayer game. I've learned a ton about performance. I brought a lot of that back to the React Native side. About a year ago, we started really focusing on, I mean, we'd always looked at performance, as being very important, but we looked at it. The thing that I didn't like about the way that we looked at it, and the thing that changed last year that I really love about what we're doing, is that we started thinking in terms of frames, in terms of 60 frames a second. Now, we did before, we thought about it, but we didn't fully think about it. It was more like, what's our kind of average? Are we hitting that? Not like a drop frame is a problem, which is how I look at it as a game dev. A drop frame is a problem. I need to know if it's 59, I don't want 59. I want above 60. I want it to always be at that level. And if there's ever a situation where it's dropping below, I want to fix it. And I think that our mentality before was like, we need to average around 60, but like it's okay for it to drop once in a while, which is more of kind of a web dev kind of mentality in some ways. Nothing against web devs. It's just more like, because web devs actually bring, I think, a lot of stuff to React Native, for example, that native devs don't even think about. There's a lot of developer experience things and tooling and all this stuff, and even just having like a package manager and stuff that native devs didn't even think about. But one thing that native devs do really do, and obviously game developers, is that they do really bring the thought that like absolute buttery perfection performance is the goal. And so brought that back from the game dev stuff. Now I'm at a point after a year and a half plus that I'm actually talking to a couple of publishers, game publishers, two that are very interested. and making a decision hopefully soon. And I feel like I'm actually on track, even working on it part time, to have Into the Dawn being a pretty viable, maybe early. I'm not no promises, but early access maybe in a year, something like that. And it's a lot of work, but it's already at the point where it's fun. You can already play with other people. There's already really cool things you can do with it. There's already been cool moments in our just like screwing around testing with it. And I think that the flight model is really fun. It feels good. It feels like to me, it feels like some of my favorite helicopter games that I've ever played, like Battlefield Vietnam and others like that, mixed with some of the game design awesomeness of Gunship 2000 and Comanche and some of these old school DOS games. So yeah, I honestly, I could go on and on and on about this stuff. So I'll stop myself there, but it's definitely a passion. It does look like I'll be headed to, it's already on Steam. You can go wishlist it. Just search for Into the Dawn. You should see it. So definitely wishlist it if you get a chance. Even if you don't like combat helicopter games, that's fine. I appreciate the wishlist anyway. And yeah, really looking forward to hopefully having more people actually try my game and see all of the literally now thousands of hours I put into it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing what AI can now like kind of kick us in the butt to do, because it's like the bar is lowered for effort in a lot of things. So like just exploring these ideas and like trying to bring them to fruition is like, oh, I think I could do that in an hour. And then like you have 90% of a game and 2 years later you've lost thousands of hours.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. Oh, well, thanks for coming on the pod. This was a really fun conversation about your whole journey and your involvement in the React and React Native community. I think it's super commendable to like you start as a 12-year-old guy just like trying to make some games, and now here you are like years and years and years later doing the same thing. So really cool to see. And thanks for coming on.
I really appreciate it, Andrew and Justin. Great questions. And appreciate you inviting me on to talk about this stuff. I as you can see, I can nerd out about this stuff forever. And hopefully we'll get a chance to chat more in the future. Maybe at some point you'll be able to make it to Chain React or something, and we can see each other.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, thanks again, Jamon. And your game looks awesome. Thank you. I love helicopter-like flight simulator games, so I'm excited to check it out.
Well, hit me up. I'll send you an early build that will probably crash, but you can try it out.
Sounds great. Thanks.